This year, NACS conducted a comprehensive consumer survey. We do these every year, and what we want to do is we want to give you a sense of what's on consumers' minds. This year, we looked at how do you get people to the pump? How do you stand out from the crowd? What do hungry consumers want? What are their preferences between going inside the store and drive-through or delivery? And what's a good customer experience? We had a 5-part series that we ran in NACS Magazine. It concludes in August. So we are giving you a preview with this podcast episode of what's in the August issue. And we'll talk about the whole series and what are the big takeaways, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats. So once again, joining us today for this conversation is Adam Rosenblatt. He oversees polling, consumer polling for NACS via his company, Bold Decision. And that's one of the things that Adam does. He basically also runs political campaigns or works with political leaders in running campaigns, etc. So we'll get to that in a second, Adam, and talk about how a convenience store may look at this as like a campaign and what things might be appropriate to kind of go through that. But let's just start out with the August issue, the 5th episode or the fifth story that we have in the series. And in this one, for lack of a better word, I want to define what we looked at as vibe and what is that customer experience in the store. I think most people, when they think about convenience store customers, it is in and out fast. And that leads to a feeling of craziness. People are shot out of the cannon. That's not necessarily what we found out, though.
Yeah, this article and this sort of take on the data, I think of it as the more fun stuff of the convenience store, because a lot of the things that we've studied in the past, in the prior 4 articles, are things that are really identical from one store to the next. And I hate to say that, but it's true, right? The candy bar you buy at this store is really going to be the same as the candy bar at the other one. The gas, hopefully, I've given this caution before, do not drink the gas, but the gas that goes inside the tank, right, is the same to some degree as the gas elsewhere. So as you said, what's the vibe? What's different that really distinguishes? We've looked extensively, of course, at price, right? But I hate to say this too, to some degree, the stores don't have control over price. Of course you do, right? If you're an individual store operator, you do set the price of the products, right? But so do the manufacturers, right? And there's been interesting things recently of certain stores that might set prices that are wildly different than others. But for the most part, you don't really have control over macroeconomics, and you don't even really have control over microeconomics. So what do you have control over? The experience that goes on inside your store, right? The memories that happen in your store. And hopefully, right, if you really want to succeed, I think the goal is to have good memories in the store, right? If you are creating bad memories in that store, that's going to be the last memory that's going to be created in the store, and somebody's not going to come back, and they're going to tell others not to go. So you have to avoid that. But we looked at that in a variety of different ways. It's sort of very, very ephemeral compared to literally the tactical stuff that we've looked at in the past.
So I mentioned political campaigns. You probably could run for chairman of NACS because what you said was identical to what Annie Gauthier said in April at our NACS Day of the Industry Summit. She said 80% of the items, if not 90% of the items that I sell, everyone else sells. So the question is, how do you sell it differently? And let's get into the vibe. People don't necessarily race in and race out of the store. That's one of the questions that we wanted to find out. Yes, speed is important, but it's the mindset that I think that we learned that how do you just kind of make people feel it's a moment of zen as well?
Yeah. So in the survey, we found actually more than half, 51%, say that this convenience store gives them a moment to briefly relax, right? That's what they prefer. That's the experience they're going for, as opposed to 31% who feel rushed to get in and out quickly, right? So it is this type of place to calm down, to cool down. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to put seating in your store, right? And you need to put benches and you need to put food services. Again, some of those things get closer to what differentiates you or not from your competitors, but it's the environment that you create, right? How does it look? How does it feel? Literally, how does it sound, right? There's certain aspects of that that make it a calming place. Again, there's going to be people who are going to rush in. Convenience stores are located everywhere throughout the whole country, and you're going to have every single type of person, all walks of life, day and night, every day of the week coming in. Some people are going to be in and out in a hurry, but for a lot of people, especially if they're going in alone, this is actually their moment to relax, where a kid isn't bothering them, work isn't bothering them, whatever the things are, bothering them. This gives them a moment to look for what it is that they might want. Which again, we know it might be a drink, and then it might be a snack, or it might just be because they need to stop and get gas. But this is a moment to step out of their vehicle.
And that means that calm down and slow down aren't necessarily the same thing. You can still be fast and calming. And one area that we want to explore related to calming relates to music. I think a lot of stores have music, some stores don't have music, but we specifically want to know, does music enhance the shopping experience?
It does. For most people, 55%, they actually like music. 23% say they don't. Again, they might not be paying attention. Most people, I think, are not going to stop at a convenience store and say, oh, this is great. Let me listen to the rest of this song. And a little, fun factoid I think we have in the upcoming article is, the average music song is what, 3-4 minutes? You can't even get through the average transaction in that time, right? So unless you come in between two songs, you're at best hearing one, maybe two songs. So that's not what's going on here. It's about making you feel welcomed. One example I always give, and this, again, a different retail format where you might be able to hear a few songs, is the grocery store, right? And you see people now, younger people walking around the grocery store and saying, this is so strange. When I used to go to the grocery store, it used to be always oldies, but now it's lots of songs that I know, right? It's lots of songs from when I was younger. That's so weird. Why are they doing this all of a sudden, right? They've become the new average target customer. So it's that type of shift that's happening. And that's happened, of course, in groceries, and that's existed forever. But to the degree that can be cultivated in convenience stores, that's actually going to make a more relaxed environment. And again, people are going to be more likely to spend more, come back more, as opposed to a place, the reverse side of the spectrum, those places that make the noises to discourage younger customers from coming into the store, right? That is not what you would want to be doing inside your store and persuading people to get out of the store.
Well, I remember it has to be 15, 20 years ago. One of these convenience stores decided they were going to stop loitering by playing Barry Manilow music outside. I don't know if it worked or not, or people really dug Copacabana. I don't know. But one of the things related to music, and when we see it when we go on Ideas to Go shoots, one of the things is when we film video for Ideas to Go, one of the things we have to do is we ask them to turn off the music. Two reasons. First off, it makes it easier to edit. Secondly, the way all these web crawlers are, if something goes online and has a snippet of music, somebody's going to find it and somebody's going to say, you owe us money now. So what we notice, though, is when we're done filming, if we don't quickly tell the store folks to turn the music back on, it feels like a different vibe. It feels quieter. It feels, more sterile. And you can really see why they turn on the music, particularly if it's something bouncy, something that is non-offensive. You don't want to play death metal. You don't want to play Himalayan throat music or whatever that awful stuff is. But something that appeals to most people. It just kind of adds a bounce to walking inside the store and a little bit of energy.
Yep. And I was going to say, you're much more the expert than me on this, and it's probably good. Look for future Ideas to Go if there is a Himalayan throat music store that's doing it. But there probably is opportunity. Again, there's always opportunity for a store to distinguish itself from others. I'm sure perhaps somewhere in the country, there's a store that solely plays jazz, right? And maybe plays only New Orleans jazz. And maybe who knows where they're located? Maybe they're located in the middle of Iowa, right? And that's their thing that makes them unique, right? And sets them apart. I can think of a convenience store that for some reason has like crowned themselves the hot dog king. And like that's the thing. And people go there just for that. And that's their branding and it makes them unique. So music, even though it's a little bit unusual, music is how we decorate time, right? Art is how we decorate space, but music is how we decorate time. And that's really what we're selling, right? We're usually selling speed, we're selling convenience, we're selling fast. But that might be an interesting opportunity to explore. Again, I'm assuming most people, are kind of sticking with, I hate to sound old, but the Casey Kasems and the top 40s and the pop music and that type of stuff. But there probably is something unique of doing a very, very unique style. And again, setting your store apart from all others, because that's how you can win, especially if you're not going to just be, I'm the guy selling or the girl selling gas for 5 cents less than the person across the street from me, which is often the case.
And if you don't think that music is everywhere, watch a movie and listen, besides the dialogue, how much there's a musical underpinning, whatever the proper word is, not necessarily songs, but notes and things like that. It really, you see it everywhere once you start paying attention. The third thing I want to talk about with Vibe and is customers, or I'm sorry, employees. They're the ones that have that interaction with the customer. And we asked one question: do you prefer to be engaged or do you want to be left alone? And interestingly, maybe most people say they want to interact with employees. 43% said, I want to interact with employees, compared to 27% who said they want to be left alone. And yeah, that probably changes by time, by mood, and things like that. But the deeper question we wanted to know is about relationships. And is there that Cheers kind of mentality in stores? I think we found the answer was yes.
Yeah. People like that, right? People like, for the most part, they like interacting with other people. When you go and order something online on Amazon, there's no face to that, right? There's whenever you do online shopping, even if the store has an owner or whatever, you don't have that interaction. Maybe the package gets dropped off at your door and maybe interact with the person dropping the package or not. But a convenience store, you almost always have that opportunity to interact with somebody. And it could be, again, back to what we said before, it could be a 5-second interaction and just paying for something real in and out very fast. It could actually be a long, extended conversation. Hopefully there's not people behind you in line and it's turning into a bad experience for them. But we've seen that as well. So that actually is something that exists. And what's interesting to me too, aside from the group who say, yeah, I actively seek this out, I like to chat, or the people who say, no, well, usher in the machines, let me go the route of self-checkout, let me not interact with people. There's a good chunk of people who are in the middle, right? And it's on a case-by-case basis, right? Sometimes I'll do it this way, sometimes I'll do it that way. We see that, I think, increasingly in a lot of retail settings where there's mobile ordering, right? And people have the option to do mobile ordering and pick up and get their item and just be on the go and on their way. And they'll even know and see those people who they're picking up the item from. And other times they say, you know what? I have that moment to relax. I'll stand in line, I'll order, I'll interact. And it's obviously not about the transaction. It's not about the speed of transaction. There's more to it. Some of the other things that we found in the survey here is 70% of the customers say that they recognize the employees. That's something I think that's exciting and unique about a convenience store as opposed to a Walmart, right? The Walmart is huge, right? Think of literally how many convenience stores you could fit inside of a Walmart, how many employees they have, or Home Depot, right? If you can find the employees, how many employees they have, you can recognize them, right? Because they're wearing a vest or they're wearing attire, but do you really recognize them? Not the same way that you do at a convenience store. And then the flip side as well, which is we found that 60% of the customers say that the employees recognize them. And they say, hey, Jeff, hey, Adam, right? That's good, right? To some people, that's going to be a little bit creepy, right? And maybe they don't want to interact. And maybe that's why they prefer to do their self checkout or not even go into the store at all. But for a lot of people, this is great, right? And I've said it before. Some people, right? Not the average person, right? But the maybe 25% or more of the country, this might be one of the only interactions they're having that day. Could be the only interaction they're having that week, right? They're not in a negative way, they're shut in. Maybe they live alone. Maybe they work odd hours. For whatever reason, this is their chance to interact. So they actually like that a lot. Again, some people won't feel that way, but that is something that we uniquely have. And just given the nature of 24/7 operations, that's something that we can have that other retail forms don't, and the online can never have.
So, speaking of that, I was on a different podcast. Somebody had me as a guest, and one of the questions was directly related to this and talking about the customer interaction. And I said, there's this store, this grocery store in the Netherlands that they have a slow lane where they specifically talk about, if you get in this lane, somebody's going to talk to you. And I said, I hear it's pretty popular. And he said, I live in Amsterdam. It is a block from my house. I think he said the name of it's Jumbo. And he said, do you want me to take pictures or do you want to talk more about it? He said, it's super popular. And it was just like one of those how small is the world moments where I'm talking about something that I think is purely, to me, is purely intellectual. And he's like, yeah, I know it. I've been there. It's cool. So yeah, it applies. It works for some people. We found, like I said, 43% prefer to talk to people, 27% prefer not to. And then when we do these numbers, of course, we know how to add. That does add up to 70, not 100. We leave out all the folks that say don't know, not sure, etc. So when we give those numbers, yes, whether it's in NACS magazine or whether it's now, we know math. We're just trying to simplify things.
And I think one of the other things going on in all forms of retail, right? We've seen technology over the past several years, change over the past several decades, right? And there's more and more self-checkout options, right? And there's a labor component to that too, and there's a cost, and of course there's theft aspects. It's a very, very complex issue. But sometimes the self-checkout doesn't make life easier for people. I could think of so many times I've been in a store where the line for the self-checkout, and even when it says, hey, only 5 items or less or 20 items or less, and people have full shopping carts and the machine's not working and this and that, and all the issues that happened have made that regular way to interact easier, right? So to some degree, I think there is been a little bit of pushback from people in recent years. I've seen this and I'm sure, Jeff, you've seen this too at airports recently, where more and more airports have switched over to just self-checkout systems, and the lines are longer and longer, and there's not enough people in the store to staff the self-checkouts, and it's just made things worse. And again, that's not improved the customer experience at all. So we always need to find that balance, I think, within our stores of setting up that option if that's something that we want, but also knowing that that doesn't always make things better. And actually, the store across the street who did all of that, I could think of, I won't name names, but I could think of a big store that went and said, hey, we're going to get rid of all the interactions and we'll make you scan in and scan out and we'll have a billion stores everywhere. And that's not quite working out because not everybody wants to have that type of thing, and quite the opposite.
Yeah, my 2 quick examples. One is grocery, one is drug. Trying to buy cough medicine at self-checkout, and then trying to find somebody that can say yes. Not only do you look way over 21, we will verify it, and you can buy whatever you want. Second is going to the grocery and you get something that says, hey, this product is on sale because it's still good to sell, but maybe not much longer. Find an employee to get the discount as opposed to automatically ringing it up. First reaction is, no, I'm just going to put it back. So you're discouraging sales. So vibe, I love the way you set it up. You run for office of NACS. Buy a store, then run for office. Um, now, before I go, we're just going to quickly cover um, just the broad trends that we looked at. And then I'd like us each to look at opportunities and threats that we found from this. But since I mentioned winning campaigns, that's your job. That's what you've done for years. And asking people the right questions, learning what they say, and learning how to adjust your messaging and your strategy. So what are things that retailers need to think about, whether these results or in general, when they want to have a winning campaign for the customer?
Yeah. So I think one of the big differences between a similarity, but a difference too, between a political campaign and a convenience store is the interaction that happens, right? Most people think of a presidential campaign. Most people are not going to meet a presidential candidate, even a candidate running for governor, even a candidate running for Congress, right? They're not going to actually meet with them. Maybe they'll meet with somebody who knocks on their door, or maybe they'll get a phone call, right? Or maybe hopefully they'll get some piece of mail. But at the most limited interaction they might get is maybe I saw in passing a TV ad for that person. That's that one chance they have to make a connection to do something important, right? To either vote for that person or vote against them. And same with the opponent in the race, right? They also are trying to strive for that connection. A convenience store has that opportunity every single time the customer walks in. And that's super awesome, but also super high risk, right? You can actually almost lock in a customer for life with a great interaction, right? A memorable experience, a great story that somebody's going to tell. Maybe they'll be like, oh my God, I got such a great deal on this candy bar. That doesn't seem as likely to happen versus something funny that happened or something unique that happened or something unusual that happened, right? There's wonderful examples we could think of. On the flip side, there's all that risk, right? There's so many factors that we can try and control for as much as we can, but we can't, right? We can't fully control for how prices are changing macroeconomically, right? You can mitigate things on crime, but also you have to sort of find the right balance. If you decide, hey, I'll keep my store safe by putting security cameras and prison bars outside and armed guards, well, sure, you created an experience and people might not want to come back, right? If something horrific happens, if something's in the news on your store, there's things you can't control for, right? And you try as best. But what about those negative factors you can, right? Encouraging your employees. And you don't have to go as extreme necessarily as Chick-fil-A does and have everybody saying, my pleasure after every single interaction, but encouraging people to smile, right? Encouraging people to sort of pick up, as we said before, on the vibe of the customer, right? And match them and have that, that's good, right? If you can take somebody who's having a bad day and turn that into a good day, great, because then maybe they'll come back. Because if they walk in a good mood and you turn their mood into a bad mood, they might not be coming back. And worse, they might tell somebody else about that too, and then somebody else isn't coming. But you have that opportunity every single time to turn any customer into an apostle for your store, right? And not just keep coming back, but tell others too. So it's really exciting, but it's a challenge, especially if you have more than one store, right? Because now you're not just doing it in one place. How do you cultivate that in every single location?
Yeah. So we covered a lot of things. We talked about vibe today, but in previous issues of the magazine, we talked about fueling. We talked about drive-through versus online versus in-store. We talked about how do you stand out, because what we generally found was people said different stores are different. I'm sorry, convenience stores are largely different. And then finally, we talked about food. I said, let's look at one threat, one opportunity. And we didn't pregame this or talk. So it's not quite like Colin Jost and Michael Shea, where they give each other jokes and then eventually everybody has to apologize. But we could repeat ourselves. We may contradict each other. But let's go through, what did you see in looking at the survey results that is one big threat that we want to look at? And then I'll go with mine.
So I think from threats, unfortunately, is costs, right? Because everybody's being squeezed on everything, right? And yes, right now I'm wearing my NACS hat and just thinking about the costs of fuel and the costs of the items in store, right? But even when they walk out of that store, they're feeling it everywhere, right? They're feeling cost of housing, they're feeling cost of healthcare, they're just feeling the strains of the world, and they're feeling like that's not getting better, right? They're getting very, very frustrated with politics. Some national polling that we've done recently for NACS shows that, sure, there's two people who say things are going great in the country and things are going great in my area. For every two people saying that, you have three who are saying, no, 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 things are going terrible in the country and things are going terrible in my area. So you have a lot of frustrated people. And there's not a lot that we can do about that as convenience stores. We can try and chip away and make their life a little bit better in small, simple ways. But as we said before, we only have 3 minutes and 30 seconds of their 24 hours. And maybe if they come in, every other day, right, we've got 3 minutes and 30 seconds out of 48 hours of their life, right? So we barely have a dent to make an impact on that. And unfortunately, people are getting more and more frustrated. And that's, I think, one of those challenges, especially as the year continues on, as we get into we are in an election year. We're getting closer to elections and there's hostilities and tensions all over the world. Where is our role in that, right? How do we not become a flashpoint of these problems, right? How do we not, we don't want to see stories about gouging. We don't want to see stories about all sorts of terrible things. But at the same time, how can we be playing a good role in some of this and make people's lives better? And we have that opportunity, I think, more than a lot of other places, just because of our size, right? 150,000 locations. Nobody else has that type of presence across the entire country the way that convenience stores do.
So mine sounds like it's the exact opposite of yours, but I think when you look at human dynamics, it's very similar. When you look at people today, like thrift shopping is huge. So is buying a $7 cup of coffee. And that's what you see younger consumers doing. They find moments where they feel like money's really important, and they find other times where it's less. So my threat that I saw of this is frequent customers like delivery a lot. And frequent customers we defined as people that come in multiple times a week. 62% of consumers over the past year say that they've got some food through some kind of delivery service, but 82% of frequent convenience store customers have. So to me, that's kind of a watch out, because while people do have tight purse strings, there also is that time where they say, I'm tired, let's get delivery. It's still cheaper than going out to eat or something like that. So how people make decisions, and if people decide they're going to start getting more delivery instead of going to the store, I think that's a watch out that our industry wants to pay attention to.
Yeah. If you talk to the economists, they'll talk about a K-shaped economy, right? And that's one of the big challenges I think we're facing, because again, unless you are at the highest end of the K shape and you have your chauffeur filling up your car, right? There's this idea that there's the rich and the wealthy who are driving a lot of the spending, right? A lot of the higher end things that are being purchased, right? The people who are going to go in and buy lots of things. And yeah, you're going to see a lot of, high end cars parked outside of the dollar store, but you're also seeing at the other end people who are really at the opposite end of the economic spectrum, really scraping to get by. And it's really, really tough, and a further and further disconnect. And we serve both of those customers, right? There's not an exclusive pump, right? For the way the airlines have, here's an exclusive gate, that's only for the high end customers, right? Anybody can get the premium gas at any one of the pumps, right? So there's that challenge that I think happens that we're trying to navigate in all aspects of society.
So let's end on the aspirational, hopeful note. What was the big opportunity that you saw in the overall survey that you think is worth talking about?
I think the fact that people still come into the store, right? And people are increasingly, it's the flip side of the threats, right? It's people are getting frustrated by technology and AI and data centers and all these other irritating things. You have a chance to go in an offline traditional setting and just breathe for a moment, right? You don't have to go and say, oh my God, I need to scan this QR code so I can unlock the bathroom door with my fingerprint and my passkey and all that stuff. No, you know what? I can just go into this store nice and simple. I can physically buy this candy bar, right? I hopefully, again, differing us from other forms of retail, hopefully the products we're selling are not locked up behind glass, right? You can just get the item. You can literally look. Inventory is very important, but we don't have shortages. So you can just go and buy your item right off the shelf and have it and have that immediacy. That's something that people like, because I think they're increasingly frustrated by all the barriers and all the headaches that they're facing. And again, that doesn't mean that some people aren't going to be excited to download an app and get a discount and do those types of things, but it's not supposed to be a barrier in people's life. And increasingly, technology is that, especially for older customers, right? Or customers who have disabilities and can't necessarily use those types of things. So we serve everybody. And, the digital world that we're all forced to live in isn't necessarily structured for everybody. It's structured for the average customer, but we actually have stores that are working for everybody.
So I'm going to add, you said it's easy to go in and have it. I'm going to add 2 words to that, stealing from Burger King. Have it your way.
Don't steal from Burger King.
No, not technically steal. Borrow. I'll put it back. But I don't want some king mad at me. Jail. Yes. That's a scary king, by the way. So when we did the food focus questions, the one that struck me was we asked, do you prefer, compared to QSRs, compared to convenience stores, do you like the options of basically anything inside the store to go along with your meal, or do you prefer something that's more narrowly defined? And 3/4 of consumers said that they like the idea that you can get a sandwich or whatever your meal is, plus whatever you consider for a side, plus whatever you consider for a drink. And literally, you could make a million different options, but you can still do it quickly. It's not going to be overwhelming where it's, as you said, simple. You can still do it. You can make it your way. And I think that's a real opportunity as we continue to look at food service as a growth area that can differentiate us. And I think it's a great selling point. So, look at the past couple issues of NACS magazine, including the one that is coming to you in August. Like I said, a 5-part series. We really went into the consumer psyche this year. NACS has all kinds of other ways to look at consumers, via our research, etc. But I think this will be a good grounding in giving people a sense of what's on people's minds. And as Adam, as we said earlier, how you can run a winning campaign with a customer. So thank you once again for being part of the Convenience Matters series and in working with us on these articles and in making our industry better. So again, thanks for joining us today, Adam.
As they say at Chick-fil-A, my pleasure.
I can't top that. Thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.